Amidst this new talk of a shutdown deal, there's also a very real legal barrier that Donald Trump isn't talking about.
They said that progress is being made with this committee. Just so you know, we're building the wall anyway.
That's not true for a variety of reasons, but right now we're going to dig into one you may have heard less about. As a legal matter, Donald Trump can't just build the wall on American land because people own a lot of that land. In fact, look at this. 2/3 of the land on the border doesn't even belong to the federal government. So if there were ever a wall, not that he's getting one from this Congress, but Trump would also have to go into a bag of tricks, which brings us to something you may have heard about. It's called eminent domain. That's where the government can use a legal process to take private property, even if the owner doesn't want to sell it. But the land has to be, quote, for public use, and the owners, every single one of them, has to get just compensation. And so you can imagine the next battle here. If Donald Trump got any farther with Congress, do many Americans think this is a real public use that they should start spending just compensation on to take people's homes away from them on the border? Now, Trump has, of course, had an eye on this law in business for decades, and he had no problem forcing people out of their own property and claiming it was all the greater good.
If you didn't have eminent domain, you wouldn't have highways, you wouldn't have roads, you wouldn't have schools, hospitals. I mean, I don't love eminent domain, but you need eminent domain or you don't have a country.
Eminent domain, when it comes to jobs, roads, the public good, I think it's a wonderful thing. I'll be honest with you.
That was Donald Trump invoking eminent domain for public things when he'd actually been using it for, of course, his own private enrichment. A wonderful thing, he said. But here you have the government coming to take potentially your home, if you're watching this in a border state, your land. And as you might imagine, traditionally, the Republican Party and conservatives have been against that kind of thing, Donald Trump taking heat for it in a Republican primary.
Eminent domain, fancy term for politicians seizing private property to enrich the fat cats who bankroll them, like Trump.
He supports taking private property through eminent domain from small property owners and giving it to big corporations. I don't know of one conservative in America who supports that abuse of eminent domain.
What Donald Trump did was use eminent domain to try to take the property of an elderly woman on the Strip in Atlantic City.
Sounds like what a cartoon villain might do, but you're listening to Republican Jeb Bush describing a very real case when Donald Trump wanted to build a parking lot specifically for limousines at a casino, which meant forcing an elderly widow from her Atlantic City home, as she'd been refusing to sell it for 2 decades.
And they want to take the only thing that I have and cherish in my lifehood away from me. I'm not really tough. I'm just fighting for what I have.
Well, some people thought she was pretty tough because she took on Donald Trump and won, and the city couldn't prove that the parking lot for limos was a, quote, public good. Which brings you down to Texas, where Donald Trump will, of course, need to use this same controversial thing, eminent domain, to seize land from the people there. And that could mean a lot more legal fights.
What makes anybody think that they can go in and take away the homes of those people?
You hate to say I would get a lawyer, but if it come to that issue and you had to, you would.
I'm a patriot, but I want to be treated fairly as well.
I grew up here. They see this as a bad place. It's not a bad place. The answer is no. And we'll fight it as long as we can.
Those are, of course, real people, just a handful of examples of many, many more. Many of them Southerners, many of them in states that happen to be red states, talking about the fight they would wage against anyone, including President Trump, who wants to take their homes. Now, George W. Bush did sign something called the Secure Fence Act under his administration, and this was going to add about 700 miles of fencing to the wall. Now, more than 300 eminent domain lawsuits were filed for that alone in South Texas, and get this, 60 to 70 of them are still going. Now, Trump was asked about this very real problem for his proposed wall last month.
Many of those who own property on the southern border will lose their property because of this. And once this happens, they say that they could go to court with you for years. It could take years.
Many of the people you're discussing, I really believe that they agree with what we're doing. I really believe a lot of them want to see border security, and they're willing to give it up.
we just showed you some of those people who don't feel that way. Donald Trump, not correct. And if anyone knows that he's not telling the truth, it's Donald Trump, given his history fighting people who don't want to give up their homes. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.